Yo, what is up guys, Stelboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So I guess this video is a quick preview and prediction for Vergil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov. Of course this fight goes down on the undercard of Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev 2. And it's a fight in which, since it got made, I've been struggling to pick. I do believe both guys have a very real chance here of winning. It's one of those fights where I could see it ending any which way. So like a knockout either way, points either way, maybe even a draw. Like no result on paper would necessarily surprise me in regards to this fight. But ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, that means it's a good fight, right? And even from a stylistic perspective, I think this one should gel to be really entertaining. I guess we'll do a tale of a tape before we get into it. Vergil Ortiz Jr. listed as 5'10" with a 70-inch reach, whereas Israel Madrimov is listed as 5'8.5" with a 68.5-inch reach. So Vergil Ortiz does have a height and reach advantage, 1.5 inches in height and 1.5 inches in reach. Vergil Ortiz has a perfect record of 22-0, 21 of his 22 wins coming by way of knockout. Israel Madrimov has a record of 10 wins, 1 defeat, 1 draw, 7 of his 10 wins coming by way of knockout. The draw was a technical draw, so can't really read too much into that. And his only defeat was to Terence Crawford, where he put up a really good account of himself, gave Crawford a tricky fight. So when it comes to the tale of a tape, yeah, Vergil has had more fights, but Vergil hasn't fought a guy like Terence Crawford, whereas Israel Madrimov has, and theoretically you would imagine he'd pick up a lot of experience from that. Vergil Ortiz is an orthodox fighter, whereas Israel Madrimov is also an orthodox fighter. Vergil Ortiz, 26 years old, Israel Madrimov, 29 years old, so, you know, both guys in and around their primes. I think Madrimov is basically as good as he's going to be. Maybe Ortiz can get a little bit better, but for all intents and purposes, both guys are in and around their primes. Now, when I think about this fight, I kind of view it as the pressure fighter, pressure boxer in Vergil Ortiz versus the explosive, herky-jerky boxer-puncher / counter-puncher in Israel Madrimov. Ortiz in his last fight against Boachuk showed signs of being human, was dropped twice. I felt he exchanged with Boachuk a little too much at times. A lot of mistakes were made in that fight defensively, and many people felt he lost to Boachuk. Can he rebound from that? Can he learn from those mistakes? I think he has to. Madrimov is a completely different fight to Boachuk, but if those same flaws present themselves in this fight, then I think Madrimov has a great chance to knock out Vergil Ortiz, because Madrimov can punch with you. He can exchange with you. He's fast, he's explosive, and he's much more powerful, I would say, one punch than Boachuk. Boachuk is more of an accumulation guy, more so than a one-hitter quitter. I think Madrimov has more single-shot power. I know he doesn't get as many stoppages, but I still see him as a harder puncher in terms of just like one-shot power, just because he's quicker with his punches, he's more explosive. And that could be a problem for Vergil Ortiz if he's as reckless as he was in that fight with Boachuk. I think Ortiz in this bout has to be relying on his jab a lot more. Ortiz has a very good jab, which he uses to pressure his opponents. And we've seen this throughout his career, whether it be against Kavalauskas, whether it be against Maurice Hooker, etc. Ortiz has shown a great front foot jab to work his way in and work off that jab, where he'll throw those combinations to the body. He'll get close to you, uppercuts through the middle. The jab is a real weapon of Vergil Ortiz, and I think that jab in this fight could be very key in keeping Madrimov kind of like in a state of being unset kind of thing, off balance. Because Madrimov's a guy who likes to keep on his toes, kind of sometimes on a bounce. I think that consistent jab of Ortiz could be very good to keep Madrimov guessing and to not let him set himself, kind of thing. The jab of Vergil in this fight is going to be very important. He needs to be a lot more consistent with his jab in this bout. And obviously defensively, I think Ortiz needs to take a lot more care than he did in the Bowerchuk fight. Listen, Ortiz is going to be a guy where you can hit him because he's so aggressive. But the guard in the Bowerchuk fight was a lot more porous. The guard wasn't active either. He wasn't moving his guard with the punches and things like that. Defensively, like I say, he was so bad in that Bowerchuk fight. The guard needs to be a lot tighter in this bout because that is Ortiz's primary form of defense, right? Sometimes he'll slip and slide a little bit, move his head a little bit, but he's not going to be that sort of guy to like slip and roll with punches per se. Primarily, his main form of defense is the guard, so he needs to be a lot tighter with that guard. In particular, he needs to be looking for the uppercut of Madrimov. Madrimov has a very good uppercut, and if that guard is like it was against Bowerchuk, then that shot could land. You know, if the guard is too wide, if the elbows are too far apart, the uppercut as Ortiz is coming in could be a pivotal shot. He needs to avoid that. He needs to nullify that. He needs to take those opportunities away from Madrimov and reduce them because, again, Madrimov is that sort of guy where he can catch you with a shot that you're not really expecting because he can throw with speed, like I said, decent power, and even decent angles as well. He's a box of tricks, is Madrimov, but if Ortiz can brush up his basic fundamentals and do what he does well, then he could very well overwhelm Madrimov. Overwhelm him with that consistent jab, overwhelm him by applying pressure, overwhelm him by working the body, make him work hard, make it a hard fight. One thing we don't know about Madrimov, or one concern I have about Madrimov, is the lack of stamina, or questionable stamina to say the least, because even in the Crawford fight, so the Crawford fight was a high level fight in terms of like technique, a lot of feinting, a lot of looking. Both guys were so cautious not to make a big mistake. Both guys in that fight had to do a lot of thinking, but in terms of like the pace, the physical pace of that fight, it wasn't a high-paced fight. And even in that fight, I felt that Madrimov at times looked tired towards the end. It's not like he was throwing a million punches, you know. So Ortiz, if he could apply the right pressure while being compact, while being defensively sound, you could see him gas out Madrimov and reduce his offense to the point to where maybe he starts to get dog-walked. But yeah, I mean, Ortiz, for me, his main course of action here, listen, he's going to be aggressive, we know that, but he needs to tighten up. He needs to use that jab a lot more in this bout. And I would try to avoid needlessly exchanging with Madrimov, especially in like the first 6-7 rounds where Madrimov is going to have a bit of juice, you know. If it has to be done, then obviously later in the fight, when Madrimov is more tired, then maybe exchange with him. I'm not saying Ortiz is bad in the exchanges, by the way, but I just feel it favours that that kind of sharp shooting style of Madrimov. I think Ortiz could be putting himself in danger, but listen, at times he's going to have to exchange, but he needs to really pick his moments when to do it and be sure of himself when he does it. Don't stand there too long. Don't admire your work too long, because he did that against Bowerchuk. I felt he stood in front of Bowerchuk for too long, got too greedy. Again, can't afford to do that in this fight. But yeah, I mean, Ortiz is going to do what Ortiz does, you know. Again, apologies, by the way, for my voice. Still kind of fucked up. Or maybe it sounds better, I don't know. As for Madrimov, I mean, the more I think about this fight, I know I said like any outcome wouldn't surprise me, but I think Madrimov on points would surprise me a little, because I don't have faith in his stamina. Unless he could drop Ortiz a couple of times maybe, but, you know, we saw that with Bowerchuk and look what happened. But I think Madrimov's best chance is like in the first half of this fight to get a knockout, to time Ortiz in between Ortiz's punches, to take a half step back and try and draw the lead of Ortiz and then counter. Madrimov loves his feints. Madrimov loves to set traps, and against an aggressive guy like Ortiz, that could be very beneficial. Again, I mentioned it earlier, the uppercut. If Madrimov can draw the lead of Ortiz and make him step in, if Madrimov can take the half step back, the uppercut, and then maybe followed by the hook, could be a great combination for Madrimov. But the uppercut in particular is going to be a key punch for him in this fight in terms of counters. I'd also like to see Madrimov be a little more active with his jab. He paused with that lead hand a lot, and he does good work off that lead hand. Like I said, by drawing the lead, by messing with your guard and gauging distance, he does really good work with that lead hand. But I want to see more of a jab from Madrimov in this fight. Give Ortiz something to think about. Again, to pick up points, etc. Don't just let Ortiz walk through the front door without having to get past anything, because if you do that, Vergil's got that type of style where he can just overwhelm you. I do think we need more, much like I said with Ortiz, we need more of a consistent jab from Madrimov in this fight, and follow up with that with like a straight right left hook combinations. I do think Madrimov would be wise to try and test that chin of Ortiz early on in this fight, because people after the Boachuk fight, people are asking questions about Ortiz. Can he actually take a punch? I think he can. Like Boachuk can crack. It's not like he got dropped against a guy who can't punch, and he got hurt by Kavalauskas earlier in his career. But again, Kavalauskas can really punch. So, but still, ask the question. Try to land with full force early on. Step in with that hard jab and come through with a straight right, followed by a left hook. Put a little bit of juice on those punches. Put a little bit of power on those punches. See how Vergil reacts. And another reason I say that is because elephant in the room, but Ortiz, man, since the illness, there's a lot of questions. Had a hell of a bad time outside the ring with his illness. A lot of inactivity. He came back, had a couple of knockover jobs against Thomas Delorme and Frederick Lawson, I think it was. And then he had a hard fight with Boachuk and he went life and death. Can Ortiz still go to that well like he used to? I know he's only 26, but the illness he had was serious. And it affects stamina, it affects your respiratory system, etc. Test it. Test Ortiz early on. See what he can take. Try and get his respect early on. Maybe we need to see Madrimov be more aggressive here, be a little more willing to fight on the front foot, because although he did well against Crawford, that's where I felt he lost the fight ultimately, because there were moments in that fight where he just needed to step on the gas, to just be a bit more aggressive, to just put a few punches together. And in this fight, he may have to do that more so, because if he doesn't, then Ortiz could just run him over. He could just outwork him. So, primarily, listen, you need to see Madrimov do what he does best, which I think is counter. But he needs to be aggressive at times. He needs to put his shots together at times. He needs to use that jab a lot more, without doubt. And also, prior to this fight, he needs to be working on his conditioning. But when I look at this fight, man, I really, 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 really struggle with it. I really, really struggle with it. My brain is telling me Ortiz, because even if Ortiz maybe loses a close fight in our opinions, maybe he gets the decision. But also there's legit reasons why Ortiz can win. But at the same time, how he looked in his last fight, I can't get it out of my head. And I know Boachuk is a good fighter, but I don't know. I don't know about this one. I'm going to go with an upset. I'm going to go with an upset, I think. I'm going to go with an upset. My prediction record recently, I feel, fell off a cliff, by the way, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm going to go upset Madrimov by knockout, by stoppage. I'm not going to pick a round, though, because I think it's one of those ones where when it happens, it happens. I'm not going to pick a round. I think it's more likely in the first 6. Maybe first 7. I'm going to go Madrimov by stoppage. I'm going to go with the upset here. But I like the fight, man. I like both guys. I think both guys have a great shot. Wouldn't shock me if Ortiz wins. But I'm expecting a great fight. I'm expecting drama. I'm expecting both guys to let it all hang out. And hopefully we get a great bout. So, yeah, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy. Peace.